hello. I didn't see you there. Welcome back to the Shoogly Shed Motors channel. Alright, so I thought I would continue with the tank. I'm kind of happy with what I've done with regards to panel beating. I don't really think I can do much better, to be honest, not without cutting like a hole under the tank and getting in it from there, because basically you're kind of limited where the tunnel is in the tank. You're limited to like how much travel you can get with a hammer or with a dolly or something to knock at. So I think there's a limit to how much or how smooth I'm going to get that just by hammering it from the inside. There's inevitably going to be a lot of body work on this tank because, well, I mean, you saw what it started out like. So if someone could get it to look decent with just filler with previous dents, hopefully I can make it look good with slightly fewer dents and slightly less filler. Either way, today I'm hoping to try and make a start on welding in a new fuel cap. That's the word, fuel cap. As I showed you the last episode, I've got this sort of Norton Manx style, I think it's called, fuel cap. Nice kind of matte aluminium. I don't know if I'll polish it or if I'll just leave it like that. Quite like it like that. Either way, it's got a big thread on it here. Screws onto this steel neck. Reason steel is important is because I can weld steel. I can't weld aluminium. And the tank is made of steel, so you know, welding the same metals together is quite important. Either way, this is a nice little machined piece here which screws onto the cap like that. So effectively, if I have the neck welded into the tank, this cap can screw on nice and tight with a rubber seal on it, and then it's just a sort of case of doing that to open and close it. So yeah, I'm pretty psyched about that aesthetic. First thing I need to do is figure out where I'm going to position it and cut a piece of steel and weld this into it. So basically, I think instead of welding a plate over the hole in the tank first and then cutting a hole and then welding into there, what I might do is weld the filler neck onto a plate first of all. That might mean that I can weld it from the underside, so you don't have any weld visible at the top of the filler neck. That might be quite neat. Do that, and then when that's done, weld the plate into the tank, and that will also allow me a little bit of freedom of where to move it and where to position it. So that's sort of my plan of action. I've never done this before. I have very limited research, so yeah, let's just give it a shot, I suppose. The good thing about this is that it's really thick steel, and I've chosen, it's like 1mm plate here, which is actually slightly thicker than what the tank's made of. But I'm just trying to give myself a little bit of an easier time with regards to welding thin sheet metal with a MIG welder. It's notoriously difficult, but as far as my research goes, you just need to go slowly and keep the weld cool. Don't go too hot on it, or it'll just melt and blow holes. So yeah, I guess you just kind of got to try it out. I'm going to do this first, and then I'm going to cut a couple of bits of scrap steel and see if I can weld them together in some kind of fashion. And yeah, just get a bit of practice, because at the end of the day, it's going to be far too easy to blow holes in this tank and make it even worse. What is it with me and power tools, honestly? Seem to be the executioner of electric motors. I think basically that I push that royal bee drill beyond its capabilities on a number of occasions now, and it's finally given up the ghost. I think I'll probably go for a brushless version next time. Yeah, it's annoying. I've genuinely only had that about a month, so pretty poor. We have a rough and ready plate to hold it fits nice and snug. So, like I said earlier, I don't really want to do any welding around the top, so I'm not sure how that would interfere with the threads. I don't know if I'd have to maybe have it proud and then weld into a gap, but I think the best way to do this is to weld from underneath and then weld this plate into the tank afterwards. So I think that's probably what I'm going to go for. It means actually it's quite a nice easy weld for me here. It doesn't need to be super pretty, it just needs to basically seal the tank. But a big weld around here should be an easy starting point, and because there's a flange on it, I'm not too worried about blowing through the metal. So yeah, that's my first thing to do, is going to clean this up a little bit and then lay a bead of weld around that. Well, there we go, it's welded in. My first weld was actually quite neat, and then I went round it a couple more times just to be sure that I'd not missed any holes, and I've kind of gone a bit funky. But you'll never see that, it's on the inside of the tank. That is what you'll see, is just the top, so that's okay. And actually, you know what? Kind of managed to do that with minimal distortion, which is quite surprising given that it's quite a thin plate of steel. But either way, now that that is fixed in place there, I can figure out roughly where I want that to go. I've got a bit of movement to play about with, and then weld that in, and that's essentially it. So after a little bit of practice with some similar gauge steel to the plate that I'm welding in, I don't really have anything quite as thin as what the tank is, but I guess I'm just going to have to fly by the seat of my pants in that regard. But I think I've got a couple of decent beads down. There were some bits that were too hot, blew through it. Some bits the wire feed was a bit slow, got a bit blobby, but kind of like zzz, 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 zzz. You want that sort of consistent crackle. But I think I've got some decent beads laid down here that I would be quite happy with if I managed to achieve them on the actual thing. The only, and it's good penetration as well, you can see it's all the way through to the other side. The only thing I'm concerned about is when you put that amount of heat, you can kind of see, I don't know if you can, but the panels just warp pretty badly, and considering like this is quite thick gauge steel compared to what I'll be working with, that's a little bit worrying. So I know that a lot of people just do a tack at a time, like just a tack, then another tack, then another tack, and tack it all together. Probably is going to be a better way of doing it to reduce the warpage, purely because if you, like I say, if you get too much heat in it, it just warps quite badly, and then you give yourself a whole extra work. I think basically I could practice for a long time, but I don't know if I'm actually going to improve upon what I've done here. I'm also a little bit impatient, I just want to have a go. like I said earlier, I'm not very good at practicing, but this is good. I have definitely learned something by trying this, but I think I'm ready to just have a crack at the tank and just, you know, yeah, have a go. Right, so I've got a complete bead round it, or at least as complete as I can see. I am undoubtedly going to have pinholes. It wasn't as hard as I was expecting, but it also wasn't easy. I just took my time, blob by blob. I was using a wet rag to cool the metal as I went, but I still have some little waves in places. I'm going to try and hammer out as much as I can, and the rest is just going to be body work, I think. Just going to have to fix it with body work, because at the end of the day this tank is in pretty poor shape. It's going to need a little bit of body work anyway, so it is what it is, and I don't think I'm going to do much better. So not without spending an insane amount of time on it. Hats off to BJ Brickhouse Builds for really taking his time and getting a good result, because it's not easy, but it's especially to get it as perfect as he did. So yeah, maybe my standards are lower, but hey, you know, everyone's different, right? Right, I've just smoothed it all off, went around it a couple of times and filled up a couple of little pinholes that I could find. I can't see anything else. I will pressure test the tank at some point, but in the meantime what I'm going to do is I'm going to smear sort of chemical metal, quick steel is what I'm going to use, around all of this bit here. It's going to need filling and things anyway, so what I figure is if I really work it in there, it will block up any like minute pinholes. Like really work it into the little gaps from the weld where I've not managed to take it down much further. The temptation to take it down really smooth, you end up just going through that original tank material, so I want to avoid doing that. So if I'm just going to go around it with chemical metal, and then when I come to do the body work, take most of that chemical metal off, because it does sand alright, but it is fuel proof and it should block up any tiny little pores. But I think, to be honest, I think that's been alright. I think it's been quite good, so fingers crossed. Fingers crossed we got away with that. Only other thing I'm going to do is do a resin liner in the tank before it all gets painted and stuff, just for triple safety's sake. I had to weld up a couple of patches on some bits on the where the tank, where it got sandblasted, they managed to blast a couple of wee holes in it. I think it's just been through the works, this tank. The inside of it actually, like rust wise, doesn't look too bad, but I think obviously it's been through the works, so I just want to make sure that it lasts once I get a paint job on it. But as far as welding in a new fuel cap goes, I think that was relatively successful. I'm pretty pleased, and it's pretty straight. You know, just goes to show you take your time about something, then you can get it right. Don't rush things. Not usually my skill set. Alright, I could call that done. The cap fits nicely, opens, shuts. I've done that big layer of chemical metal. It's way more than I need, but basically what I want is that to set and just create a complete seal. If there's any micro holes or whatever, we'll just fill right into them. I've really worked it in there, right up to the fuel cap, the filler neck, sorry. And I'll take most of that off when I sand the tank down ready to paint it all. Like I say, it's just to cover it all, make sure that my welds are good. I'm fairly certain if there are any holes, they will be minuscule, so that should do the job. And like I say, I'm going to pressure test the tank before I do, or before I go painting it anyway. So as far as switching the fuel cap out goes, I'm going to call that bit done. The tank obviously needs loads more work. It needs thorough cleaning out. It needs resin, like epoxy sealant put in it. I also need to obviously do a little bit more body work and do all the filling, priming, filling, and then spraying and clear coating and things. So there's loads more work to do to this tank, but the first kind of big hurdle was getting this fuel cap changed, so that's done and I'm pleased with that. I'm pleased with the result. So yeah, I'm going to wrap this one up here and maybe come back to the tank in a wee while when I've got a couple of other things done on the bike, and when I'm kind of thinking about finishing up. I don't really want to do any too much body work or anything like finishing work to the tank if I'm going to be chucking it about a little bit while I work on the bike. So that's for the future. Anyway, that's where I'm going to leave you. As usual, thank you for watching, and please do like, comment and subscribe, and I will hopefully see you in the next episode. Take care and goodbye.